So this is the second part of my video lecture, and I was talking about health and hygiene and how it has been represented in Bibhutibhushan's works or Sharat Chandra Chattopadhyay's work, and I have mentioned a few lines from Sharat Chandra Chattopadhyay's Pandit Mosha. So, despite the British claim that there was prosperity and good governance during Victorian rule, India suffered from famines and epidemics. Chittaprata Palik, in his article published in Indian Journal of History of Science, claims that epidemics are said to have caused by the construction of embankment for the railways, which led to stagnation of rainwater and breeding of mosquitoes. The other cause was the movement of labor from the other provinces and their crowding in coolie quarters or the factories, mines and plantations. The third factor was the transmission of disease of alien people in the intercommunicating zone. However, the Orientalist mindset and racial prejudice prevent the British to understand the nature of Indian culture. Now, if you look at some of the argument or in this connection, I would mention a few lines from an American journalist who wrote this piece of article in latter half of the 20th century. Let's see what he had said. He said, it is beyond human possibility to put India in good sanitary condition in any reasonable time, and to make the pilgrims observe the communist rule of hygiene and cleanliness would require 2 soldiers for each pilgrim. The most riotous imagination could scarcely exaggerate the filth of India and Egypt and of the Hindu and Mohammedan pilgrims. So long as the pilgrims continue, Europe and this country will be endangered. So, these lines are not only a reflection of or not only a derogatory conception of Hindu and Muslim pilgrims, but as well as a general perception of India in colonial period and their lack of sense, especially on health and hygiene, I must say. So, Indian servants were considered then to be the carriers of contagion, and Indians in general came to be despised as untidy and deceitful. Religious and cultural practices, personal behavioral traits, as well as community and social life all came to be seen as the expression of Indian morbidity. The colonial state in turn passed a series of legislation. By the mid-19th century, cholera was seen as purely of Indian origin. That's why it's named as Indian cholera or Asiatic cholera, and was considered to be the deadliest of all diseases of the 19th century. Considered by the fear of being overcome by cholera, European nations set or met to discuss the spread of contagion, and the first sanitary conference held in Paris in 1851 accused British India of being responsible for the origin of spread of cholera. Arnold wrote about this in 1993 book. Yeah, but in the aftermath of internal rebellion or Sipai Mutiny of 1857, and against the backdrop of global criticism owing to the increasing influence of cholera, the British administration in India introduced a set of measures towards reorganizing the sanitary and public health departments in India. Municipal administrations were constituted at the provincial centers with the objective of cleaning the streets, removing night soils, providing safe drinking water, draining stagnant water. In medical sectors, the establishment of charitable dispensaries from 1830s has been regarded as one of the earliest attempts to extend Western care to the Indians. They become centers for vaccination against smallpox and for spreading Western ideas about hygiene and sanitation. In Bengal, the total number of dispensaries rose from 61 in 1867 to over 500 in 1900. Though from 1870, the colonial administration distanced itself from the financial responsibility of running these dispensaries, and they were led to raise their own. But proper sanitation, so you can understand the proper sanitation and healthcare were rare in rural Bengal. The government had shifted its burden to local self-government to finance its own water supply and sanitation projects, but it is difficult to generate enough funds to tackle a cholera epidemic. People flock to Ola Bibi, the goddess of cholera, not exactly for cure, but for moral reinforcement. It is easy to blame such practices, but the both question is obviously pure water supply and sanitation where the British government lacks or fails, I should say. Not directly though, but in other way, literature testimonies this lack of medical policy in colonial Bengal. Take for an example, Rabindranath Tagore's Chaturanga. In this novel, the character of Jathamashai set up a private hospital at home for poor people during the epidemic of plague. He did not discriminate them on the basis of religion, on the basis of their ritual practice, until he himself got perished by the plague. Of late in colonial Bengal, as you all know, that plague took a devastating turn. Even in another Tagore's work, and this time a poem, Puraton Britto, the old manservant, tells the aching story of a much revealed house elf who nurses his master to health, but later succumbs to smallpox. Another Bengali writer, film and film director as well, Premanpur Atorthi, in his autobiographical fiction, Mohasthabit Jatak, published in 1944, painfully captured his personal experience during the epidemic. How even rumor, even lack of knowledge, medical facility, or the fear of Western medicine all have been manifested in his autobiographical narrative. So, from this perspective, or from now here on, we must question what was the form or what was the nature of colonial government on their way of taking the well-being of the citizen. I think in this connection, Michel Foucault's concept of governmentality would be helpful for us. Though the prime agenda in Foucault's work is was especially understanding of the networks of power and knowledge. Still, this lecture, which has been entitled as Security, Territory and Population, was mainly concerned with the overarching problem of government. That is, how to govern oneself, how to be governed, by whom should we accept to be governed, how to be the best possible governor. So, he is thus interested in how governing happens, or how it is taught. These lectures start with the theme of biopower, one of the Foucault's most important contribution to our social sciences. Biopower refers to a set of procedures or relations that manipulate the biological features, for example, birth rate, fertility of human species, into a political strategy for governing an entire population. Whilst the theme of biopower is largely dropped, population figures heavily in this lecture series. And this is absolutely a modern idea, or the key idea to the functioning of political power. Population in this sense refers not only to people but to phenomena and variables and so on. In colonial Bengal, primarily with the introduction of the census in 1881 and the Epidemic Disease Act passed in 1897 to control plague, empowered the provincial government to make provisions for everything, for the inspection of corpses and the compulsory notification of all cases of deaths and plagues, and they can even intrude to anyone's home. So you can understand how the government policy, which has been told as for the well-being of the society, becomes a kind of regulation, becomes a kind of norms of control. So this vast battery of information collated through the official methods gives the state every means to introduce a new kinds of regulation and restriction to exert its control and discipline. So the disease diseased body become, becomes personalized and the site of state control. What problematic, I tell you, is that if any citizen does not share this political life provided by the colonial state, their real life or their personal life would be exposed to them. They become the threat to the society or even criminal. The Epidemic Disease Act did the same thing with the Indian people without considering the socio-economic position. And this is nothing but a neo-political form of government. I'm not going much deep about biopolitics or necropolitics. Just to quickly remember that if biopolitics is the governmental power over life, necropolitics would be the power over death, and both are modern disciplinary form of state control. Uh, you can read extensively on this section from David Arnold's book Colonizing the Body: State Medicine and Epidemic Disease in 19th Century India. So, apart from this coercive colonialist governmentality, there was a strong emergence of nationalist sentiment too, especially after Sibakti. The fear of Western medicine was constant, but a parallel discourse on Ayurveda, homeopathy, or even the agenda of self-rule was being very emergent. To secure home or domestic sphere and its purity, women emancipation was necessary, which starts with consciousness of their body, their health, and their habitat. So, if we look at some of the women fiction and non-fiction writings published in various magazines in that colonial period, I think this agenda would be much more clear. In Bama Bodhani, eminent in Bama Bodhani, one of the leading Bengali magazine of those days, eminent women figures like Sri Charumati Devi, Sharma Kumari Devi, and others who wrote on women health consciousness, homemade medicine, and even provided information on disease. Even the remedies of malaria were described, though the scientific explanation of all this was not known. According to these literatures, the leaf of the plant Kukushima helps to cure malaria, or the plantation of sunflower tree prevent the house from the mosquitoes. The authors wrote extensively in favor of Ayurveda, the traditional Hindu medical system. It was stated that if an ailment develops in a particular environment, then it is better to find out its remedy only in that place. It is absurd to treat a patient in Bengal with a medicine of Lapland. In Mitra Prakash, another well-known magazine circulated from Dhaka, an article was published in 1872 on the book review of Kavita Manjari, a collection of poems by Srimati Basanta Kumari. She was the wife of a landlord and had already earned fame as a poet. From her collections of poems, it is evident that in colonial Bengal, the infrastructure for treatment was pathetic and was full of confusions even. The affluent people could not get proper treatment and spent money like water. She expressed her frustration and depression through her writings and prayed to God for her speedy recovery. Sri Lakshmi wrote a poem on the Bardwan fever, or a special kind of ailment which once took the form of an epidemic in the district of Bardwan and later in other parts of Bengal. She wrote this in Bamabodhi, where the language was not so ornamented to her touch. In the very beginning, the poet addressed Almighty to look after the miserable condition of the natives due to the Bardwan fever. She describes how the poor people, irrespective of their age and physical strength, become the victims of the disease. They were so helpless that they could not afford to buy allopathic or Western medicine. Prabhavati Devi, another famous Bengali novelist, in 1924, wrote an article in Shastro Samachar Patrika on malaria. The title of her piece was Malaria in Bengal, or Banglai Malaria. In this article, she had taken an attempt to analyze the reasons behind malaria. She was aware about the deadly effects of the ailment which devastated villages of the village. Prabhavati though her writing tried to investigate the actual cause, where the cultivated indifference of the British Raj and the unreceptive mentality of the contemporary society becomes metaphor. To describe the only source of potable water for the village, she wrote, "The river Navanga is thoroughly filled with water hyacinth and utilized by the villagers for the jute cultivation. As a result of this, the water becomes reddish and foul-smelling. It also transformed into a breeding ground for mosquitoes." The importance of Western education also constituted as an imperative component of her article. She firmly stated, "It is our duty to cope up with existing situation. We must learn. We must learn English to become self-sufficient, even go abroad for higher education. There is no restriction in the traditional Hindu religious text about all this." These are the creations of few bigoted, illiterate Hindus who are against any kind of freedom. The acceptance of Western education does not mean the transformation of a Bengali native into a Shahi or foreigner. A certain section of Muslim women in Bengal also become health conscious during the first half of 20th century. Amongst them, Faizul-Nisa Chaudhary was a pioneer. Her autobiographical novel Roop Jala was an emblem of her feminist, far-reaching thoughts and revolutionary ideas. She had understood the deplorable condition of Muslim women, whose health never became a serious concern for the male members of the society. Another Muslim writer, Begum Rokeya Sekhawatul Hussain, through her writings, spread the message of Muslim women's emancipation. She emphasized on the well-being of Muslim women and gave instruction to stay healthy. Rokeya was aware of the growing rate of infantile mortality and appealed both to the pregnant and lactating mothers to respect the age-old beliefs along with the Western line of treatment. She tried to highlight the scientific aspects of Islam, which had no contradiction with mere Western medical science. So, these writings, I think, are the examples of enlightened mind with the aspiration of emancipation too. They not only severely criticize the patriarchal society for the unreceptive mentality and callous attitude during those epidemics, during those disease, but also the colonial government for its cultivated indifference. The main object of the authors was also to enlighten the readers regarding the existing condition of health and hygiene, where malaria and Bowman fever played the role of metaphors. But these works fueled nationalism too, where an ardent desire for self-rule was hidden, particularly in Prometheus' Peace and Lakshmana's poem. Now, my conclusive remarks. Let me tell you that I understand it is very difficult to cover this vast area of field, since it is complex. It is a complex network of history, politics, economy, culture, and of course literature. But I would say the generic claim that the literature did not claim epidemics in colonial Bengal adequately, just like the European imagination did with plague, is somehow true and false at the same time. It is true in the sense that epidemic did not feature as a strong and central figure in any major literary works. It is true. It is similarly false because sometimes you need to understand that the silence of the text can manifest most of the unsaid, being remained only as a background of the story and as a primary motive of the story. Literature in colonial Bengal showed the very construction of its culture, which has been an amalgamation of myth, ritual, and tradition. They took disease not only as a bodily issue only. The poor colonial health system and the state repressive body politics are coupled with the misery of the poor people during epidemics have been reflected in their works. Of late, the anti-colonial resurgence and the agenda of self-rule were also manifested there. Therefore, disease, I think, as Susan Sontag says, becomes metaphor here. Metaphor of misery, metaphor of indigenous culture, metaphor of nationalist struggle. I've started with two quite dissimilar poems. One was a nursery poem, another was of Sophocles, but both depicted epidemics in a very different way. I just wanted to show that literature could be very ungeneric, and the meanings of a particular text, the meaning of a particular text can go much deeper than what we think. Let me give you a very quick example. Many a time we might have encountered with a story like this. A little girl asked for a doctor's help as her mother was ill. The doctor in that stormy night reached their hut only to find that the mother was already dead. The villager woke the doctor up in the next morning in a barren field and informed him that the young girl and her mother had long been dead due to cholera, and the place was actually haunted. It is quite unlikely that even such stories are somehow connected to epidemics, and this the spectre of epidemics, perhaps haunts us even today. So I think we need to start looking at those popular stories as well, along with those canon. And who knows,